Hello, welcome. I'm going to be doing a short lesson. This should be very quick. I thought I would talk about one of the very popular Joseki these days, which is this double hane, the attached double hane Joseki. And I just wanted to show kind of an interesting analysis of it. It won't tell you anything about necessarily why you should play it, although there might be a little bit of that. But it might just give you more of a theoretical foundation as to why this may be an option you want to play, despite, other than just like that it's very popular right now. So before talking about this, we should talk about, this Joseki, right? This is very common, either playing the extension or playing high. So if this is the old Joseki, and if you put this in like Lila or something, it's actually, in most cases, is not really any worse. The slide sometimes loses a little bit, and then the answer sometimes loses a little bit, so they might cancel out in a given situation. But overall, it's actually quite even. It's not really that bad, according to AI and according to humans. And then some mathematical theory, you can see that it's also pretty even. So just to start with, this is our foundation. And I want to talk to you a little bit about comparing this shape, particularly this slide and defend shape, without the extension, we'll add the extension back in later, to this shape. So at this point, black is extended. Now, if you look at some of the modern games, black is actually not playing this extension, but I'm not really going to cover that here. In some games, black is playing this, or sometimes jumping, or sometimes just tenuki altogether. So those are all options. But I'm just going to talk about this extension. And at this point, white has two options. White can press up, at which point black usually tenukis, extends, or peeps. And then there's a whole bunch of complicated variations like the cover or just connection and it's a running fight. Or white can back off. Usually this way is played when there's a black stone in the upper left, like this. And usually pushing up is played when there is a white stone or some white support here, because this will help to develop the top. Anyway, so let's talk about this. So I'm going to use a little technique. It's called Tewari, or Tewari. I don't know how you say it in English per se, but Tewari. The idea with Tewari is it's often translated as sequence dissection. And that sounds very fancy, but it's really quite simple. Sequence dissection is basically the idea that you can either remove stones. So I have another video on this, but just for instance, and this is like a super simple base case, right? Let's say we wanted to count this territory. Well, we could actually just remove a black stone and a white stone, and the amount of territory here will be the same. Now, this is obviously just for counting, but you can do the same thing for like a position. So in this upper right, I'm actually going to remove these two stones and these two stones, and I'm going to take, oh, sorry, not that one, these two stones, and I'm going to leave it like this. So I took out, just to show again, I'm going to take out these two and these two. So like this. And if you notice this is actually very similar to a shape we already saw, which is this one. Now, but the only difference is instead white has pushed here. And when white pushes, normally black should tenuki or extend. Both of these are good options, because defending the corner is typically quite small, and even if black defends and then if white defends later when white plays here, it's basically sente in most cases, not always, and that's because white has a really strong follow-up here. There are some long variations of the ladder where black can refute this, but even without that, just white putting pressure on the corner like this is often fine too. Anyway, so if we go back to this shape, you'll see that actually when I remove the stones, it looks like black has actually just answered this move by extending. And definitely compared to the hane, the extending is not really as good. It has a benefit, which is that black is much stronger, but it gives up a lot of points, and it's not really that useful for black, because black already had a base here. And by extending, all black has done is really given white R18 in Sente to make white stronger. So just to note, this shape is probably slightly good for black, slightly good for white, sorry, because white has gotten this exchange in Sente. Now, you remember the other exchanges we took off, so I'm going to put those back on. The first exchange I'm going to talk about is black playing here. Well, this is obviously a bad exchange for black. It could be a good one if black follows up, but that's not necessarily the case. And black is removing the options of pincering, attaching on top, shoulder hit, attaching here, right? There are a lot of options here, and black is removing them for really not any gain. This is just like your typical bad exchange, helps white fix the shape, and removes options for black. And obviously you can see the P17 stone has some problems. Now let's look at white. Well, if we're just looking at this shape, it's white's Sente to play one of these Ataris. Now, I don't think it's really that bad to play either, but to play this Atari and have black connect is a little bit of a loss, right? If we think about this Joseki variation where white pushes up, is it really that much, is that any better to do that than to just extend, right? There is one benefit, right, which is later, if white were to Atari, black probably wouldn't connect. So you don't have that shortage of liberties to exploit immediately, but you still kind of have this kind of attaching, and then you could take in Sente, right? Unless black wants to connect, which then you're getting another good exchange. So this Atari is not really losing much, but it is a little bit, slight loss. I think when you look at these exchanges, this exchange and this exchange are probably about the same amount of loss. So I would actually call that overall a net even. But overall, right, now at this stage, white has to add a move here or by extending. That's very similar to this shape, where white just extends at the end, right? Well, it's a little bit constrained one space, but white got a little bit more in the corner. So overall, it's actually quite similar, if not even, with the upper left shape, with one small benefit, which is if black extends here, right? So if we compare it to the original shape, white has gotten this little extension, and maybe plays here, or in the other case pushes up with some exchanges. The pushing up is slightly different, but if we just compare this one with the jump is a little small, but you couldn't really go further after those exchanges. And it's pretty normal to jump. So I would say actually it makes a lot of sense why you would consider this good, maybe a little slightly good for white if black makes this extension, right? And we're seeing a lot of it. The most common pattern these days, if we go back to the normal move order, is actually for black to tenuki here or to play the cap. And actually in some variations with like Fine Art or Benzendar, they actually just push once. And we also see variations where black pushes through. But this variation where black connects, white defends, and black extends is becoming less and less common. And I think part of the reason for that is, well, overall white is actually getting a slight positional advantage because white is getting, or a slight local advantage, sorry, is probably a better description, because white is getting this extra base in the corner. And this extension, while big for making a base for black, right, base of two groups, is not really necessary, right? Because if we see, like, if black tenukis, white could, let's for instance, white pushes up, right? Now it's actually better for it to play here because there's no shortage of liberty cut type of business. And if white takes, you have a variation like this. And typically black will push once and jump or tenuki again. And even though white is, getting a lot of points, black is nowhere near any sort of trouble. Black could probably tenuki again. And at this point, you could give up the 4 stones, and you could sacrifice even more. And it's not really it's not a major loss, right? Because you're taking lots of Sente moves and white's playing your living group. So that's all I kind of wanted to show was this like cute little Tewari breakdown. There are some, lots of variations that are coming up from this now. But if you just see the shape, probably wouldn't play here. And the rest of the moves are pretty close to even. And you can see compared to The other benefit of this, right, is of course when white plays here, black is basically forced to hane, and you can double hane. So you're basically forcing this one line. Whereas if you play the slide, black doesn't necessarily need to play here, so you definitely wouldn't get this exchange. But black definitely also wouldn't play here if black would want the top side or some sort of fighting variation. Okay, that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this short video, and catch you next time.